My name is Robert Schweigert. I am your host. I have my co-host with me as well, Lisa Fletcher.
Hi again.
We are customer engagement specialists, otherwise known as account managers here with Benchmark. We wear many hats, but one of the things here that we like to do is put together these types of webinars. Today's webinar is a continuation of Respect the Inbox. It's an acronym that we've created to cover a lot of different grounds that encompass deliverability as a whole. Today's topic will be on content. But for those of you who'd like to join in the conversation with us, we do have representatives ready and live to answer your questions. You're welcome to go ahead and use the questions box here in the control panel, and we'll be more than happy to go ahead and address those questions for you live here. If they are private questions, don't worry, we won't air out your laundry or anything like that. We'll go ahead and respond to you privately. But for those of you who'd like to join in the public conversation, go ahead and use the hashtag #BenchmarkLive to go ahead and tweet your responses. Again, we do have live representatives that will be addressing your questions and concerns. So back to the matter at hand, this is Respect the Inbox. So what is Respect the Inbox? As I mentioned before, RESPECT is an acronym that we've created that will encompass various avenues that encompass all of what to do with deliverability. We are actually in the 6th of 7 webinars, so we only have one more that remains, and that will be on technology. But today, we're going to be discussing content. Now, what is content? Content, this should be pretty basic for a lot of you guys here, but essentially your content, it's at the heart of everything. It's what you're creating, what you're deploying out to your subscribers, whether that be in the form of a promotional type of campaign, maybe something a little bit more informational based like a newsletter, or transactional, maybe internal notifications, updates, tracking information, things of that nature. So those are going to be typically the types of emails. Now, of course, there's other types of emails as well, but these are the 3 primary use cases for email marketing. We'll be discussing a few of these as well as we progress throughout the webinar here. If you guys have any questions about content, anything content related, please feel free to go ahead and put your questions in the questions box, and we'll be sure to answer those. So let's jump into looking at a couple different types of content here. Now, we are a permission-based marketing service. For those of you who are not quite sure what permission-based means, I have Lisa here that will help explain that.
Oh, well, permission-based marketing means that they're expecting your communication. So they've given you their email address because they know that you are sending email and they want to get it. So they sign up to your list, they give you, maybe you see them at an event, or they give you a business card, maybe they've emailed you in the past. That is a way for them to give you permission.
Excellent. Now, what would be examples of not having permission?
Anytime that you go to their site, you get their email address and they don't know. Anytime that you purchase a list, anytime that somebody else has maybe given you their list, those are not considered permission-based.
Excellent, excellent. So there are a couple different types of permission-based lists. Benchmark, we're not really sticklers about it, although the proof is always in the pudding, as we say. But there are 2 different types. We have the initial opt-in, which we would consider that a single opt-in. That would be if you're exchanging business cards or meeting people at events, you're networking, their past clients, things like that. Those would be that single opt-in. Then on the other side of the spectrum, we have a double opt-in, which in our opinion happens to be our preferred method of acquiring new leads. And that actually requires a second step for any of the new subscribers. So once they actually land on a landing page and they're given the opportunity to forfeit their information through a sign-up form, they'll then be required to perform an action. This action will require them to go into their inbox and open up a recent email that has been sent to them, requiring them to click a link to verify that they would actually like to be added to the subscription. Now, for those of you who don't have that, don't worry, it's not the end of the world, anything like that. Although any new subscribers that you have, we highly recommend that you do have them come in through a double opt-in form. That way, if anything in the future, for any reason they were to, you would need to show proof that they had given you permission, you'll actually have that there. So it's something really great to have in your back pocket. Now, when it relates to permission-based email marketing services, there are rules and regulations that we in the US are obligated to follow. Obviously, there are, canned spam is something that we have to take into consideration. Also, GDPR, that is also something that we have to initially respect the inbox. And that's kind of the basis of these webinars, is just to kind of teach other marketers, what are good examples of how to keep that respect and maintain that, stimulating obviously the highest open rate and engagement that you can have possible. Sending unsolicited emails is not recommended. Cold emails, they do have success, although typically for marketing purposes, you may want to find other means of being able to market with them as well.
Yes, because with an occasional success, you can have devastating consequences.
That is very true, and we'll get to more of that in a little bit here. Let's talk a little bit about a couple of these emails that we see here. The first one is your typical promotions and advertisements. This is, I'm gonna say, this is probably the most popular type of email that I see today, next to a newsletter. Now, these promotions and advertisement emails, they can have a number of goals behind them. Obviously, it's to promote and target services and products that you may offer, but also they could be used to help gather new information on your subscribers. We talked a lot about targeting, and because this relates to content, your content is really important that you're emulating what it is that the initial subscriber signed up for. If they've signed up to receive promotions from you, send them promotions occasionally. Send them information that they're going to want to click through and have engagement. If you're noticing that people aren't clicking through your emails, it could be something like a targeting concern. Your content isn't displayed properly to them to where they're enticed enough to want to continue to engage with your services. What we mean by that is sending out emails. You may be offering 3 or 4 products. If you're noticing a group of individuals are not engaging, they're not clicking on those products, it may be that they're just not interested in those, or they're not in the process of that buying phase quite yet. So segmenting and retargeting people is something that we're going to talk a lot about here. Informational and newsletters. I'll go ahead and I'll let Lisa kind of explain a little bit more about the importance behind these and how they're best used.
Right. So I actually help a lot of people who've only done promotions and advertisements. After a while, they see that their list starts to drop off, that people start to unsubscribe. So what I do is I push them toward using informational newsletters. And basically, that's a way to take some of the information that you would be putting in your promotion or your advertisement and diving a little bit deeper, giving them a little bit more information, basically getting some engagement to them by providing information that's valuable to them. Mm-hmm. So this should be at least in your arsenal of emails. If you're doing just promotions and advertisements and you're doing them on behalf of your company, then you're missing out on maintaining that engagement, because those people are going to drop off after a while. So you want to provide things about what you do, or problems that you can solve, or information that is interesting to them within these informational newsletters. It doesn't have to be a traditional newsletter. Mm-hmm. Don't think of that. Think about just a way to present your information that maybe something they didn't know, or maybe there's something interesting. Maybe you have a good story to tell. Yeah. Those are what you want to use those for.
Great examples there. I can't say enough how important a newsletter is for, especially those of you that are looking to nurture leads. Always cramming down the barrel, buy my stuff, here's a promotion, 25% off. Those are all really great ideas. However, like Lisa was mentioning, that stuff gets old and people get burnt out and they just drop off lists because that content isn't enriched enough. Providing a newsletter, you're really giving them the opportunity of being able to educate them more about your products and services and other things within the community that revolve around your business. So it's a great way of being able to nurture these leads, provide a little bit more demand with them as well by providing it in an informational base. And then lastly here, we have internal notifications. And a lot of you guys these are probably the #1 email that you don't open in your inbox. I'll admit, My Facebook notifications, I should probably turn those off because I don't think I've ever opened a single one. LinkedIn notifications, boy, do I get a lot of those, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do as well. But they're also very important if they're used properly. It's a great way of roping people back in. It's a reminder email that is always there, that they're always going to receive. And any little change of anything, it's nice to be able to update people so that you can have a paper trail of that as well. So those are good examples there. Do you think there's anything else that I've missed with the notifications there?
With an internal notification, I would think as far as content goes, try to make it interesting, especially if they have to remain on your list. For those people that have to get this information, have fun with it, right? The more fun that you're having creating it, there's a good chance the more fun they're going to have reading it.
Yeah, you don't want to always have these boring kind of like notifications. It's good to see, like for instance, this one will show this is someone who has recently accepted your invitation, but it'll also reference here's some other people potentially in the network that you could also connect with. Prime example of that right there. Transactional emails as well. Those are also something really great that would fall under the category of internal notifications. If you're sending payment receipts, people love to receive those receipts and be paperless. That would also encompass this. If you're selling anything that needs to be shipped, those shipping receipts, the tracking numbers, all of that type of information is great to provide to them there. If you're a subscription service, showing them the remaining balance, what they've paid, the history, that kind of thing would also all fall under this category as well.
Yeah, and in that instance, I think a lot of times they're looking out for those. So just make sure to keep them concise and well formatted. Try, using the standard formatting within the editor, and don't try to circumvent the formatting by using the space bar, because that will actually blow up in your face when you test it across multiple platforms.
And I understand that some of you guys may not fully understand some of the terms that we use. We had experienced some issues before in previous webinars. So just to clarify what she means by the formatting is when you initially come into the editor itself, how its layout is, that would be your format. Now, how you enter in your data, your information into the body of that email is also very important as well. A lot of us like to copy and paste, or we like to add spacing, and that can also throw off the mobile responsive nature behind the editor. And what that means is that the screen that you're using will adjust to just over 1,200 different screen sizes and everything in between. So it's very important to understand what that terminology means and how that will affect your content. So let's go and let's jump into a little bit more. So we talked a little bit about content. Now the content itself is going to have the success, and that's what we want to look at. We want to make sure that we're having scalability and that we're hitting the right tunes with our subscribers, knowing that we're closing those lengthy sales cycles and hopefully generating some return of investment. So whether that content is information-based or if it's an offer or promotion, how and what your email content is can largely make a huge difference in your performance. So we're going to talk about some of those stats and what to expect, and keep in mind that some of your industries may not be listed here, and if you have any questions about your specific industry, feel free to ask us, because we do work with, say probably about 1,500 accounts each. And Lisa's actually been here going on 8 years, and I've been here going on 4 years. So we've had the luxury of being able to work with thousands of different types of marketers in all different walks of life and different industries as well. So if you have questions about that, feel free to go and ask those. So we're going to go and leave this screen open for just a second here to kind of go over some of the clicks and opens. Now, for some of your industries, it does differ greatly for the clicks. Now, these types of clicks were based off of the number of people who had, the number of emails in total, not the number of people who had opened. So it's different than a click to open. This is a click through. So a little bit different there. So what we're seeing here is of the entirety of the list, B2B sales emails typically get around 24, almost 25% open rate. And that's generally what you're going to see across the board with other industries. Now, the click through of that is just under 3% of all of the recipients. So of 24% of the people, it's not 2% of 24, it's 2% of the entirety of the list, just to clarify for some of you here. Event marketing has definitely changed a bit. So some of these numbers are actually from 2016. So a lot of these have actually improved. I don't think very many of them have decreased at all. I know e-commerce has definitely jumped up. I believe they're about 20% now. Looks like we have a couple of questions here as well. Let me see. Oh, my questions window went away. So we are going to talk a little bit about content again in a moment. We just wanted to kind of show this to depict, generally, where do you feel that you stand with your industry and the numbers that you see here. Now, these are based off of averages. A lot of you guys may even be experiencing something greater than the numbers that are shown here, and that is great. If you're seeing something a little bit less than that, we're going to talk about some strategies on how to help you improve your overall engagement. And don't worry, everybody, we'll go ahead. We're going to be sharing the slides and a recorded version of this webinar shortly after we complete it. So let's go ahead and let's jump into our next topic here. Some content tips. Now, we see tons and tons of content all the time. We see the success and we also see the failures. So over those triumphs and those pitfalls that we see, we definitely see a lot of things that are trending. Now, Lisa, we mentioned here some of the spam keywords. What are some of the words that you see that pop up the most frequently?
A lot of the words that pop up the most, or believe it or not, are salesy words or offer words. The word offer itself is actually considered a spam word. Another thing you want to consider when you're thinking about spam words are repeating characters. So if you have a lot of question marks in a row, if you have a lot of exclamation marks in a row, those would be considered spammy as well. So each industry can be a little bit different. The more salesy it is, the more keywords it's going to trip. So it just depends on your subject matter. If you're trying to sell something, take a look at what you would view as the most successful in your industry, or maybe in a general sales sense, on what they're using as words and what they're not doing. That's the best way to find out spam words, because there used to be lists on the internet, but we just couldn't keep up. There's just no way to be able to catalog them all.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is common sense. There's other things that you need to know in regards to the words and formatting. And that is, if you're using very loud colors for certain words, that may also be considered spammy. So if you want to have a sell button, that's fine. You want to have it red, that's fine. If it says sale, you may not want to make it red, right? You can have a sale button, make it a different color. You can use the word sale, don't make it red. So combinations can also be considered spammy. Another thing is using link shorteners. You want to avoid doing that, because that is also considered spammy, because they can't see where the link goes to. It's better to take that word, that original URL, and link it to a word, link it to a picture, link it to a button. Yes. So those are some good content tips that you can use to help avoid triggering spam filtering.
Yeah. And something else to kind of keep in mind with this, we did mention a bit about common sense. Spam keywords, popular words, cash, free, money, diet, work from home, these types of things in all caps, excessive punctuation, random hyphens and things like that. If you're really making these words big and bold, you're gonna get caught up pretty quickly. And one of these words is totally fine on its own, but in combination with other words that would be typically picked up as spam, like free money today, best loans, cash loans, things like those tend to really get picked up. Also, if you're swapping out the word cash for the dollar sign, that was the word I was looking for the dollar sign, that can also get picked up. These words, not just in the body of your email, but also in your subject lines as well. So be mindful of that. A good way of really understanding what to avoid is spend a couple minutes in your own spam box and just kind of look at the subject lines, look at the content that they're sending to you. A lot of it is very in-your-face type of marketing, and that tends to not really fall very well on most consumers. People can easily mark things as abuse, and that will also tend to trigger other type of content that may be similar to yours. So keep in mind that these are things that are always changing. What got you here today may not get you there tomorrow. So if you're using cash, free money, diet, those types of words, and you're watching your open rates drop down, bounce rates are going up, and you're seeing that you're not getting a lot of inbox delivery anymore, it could be very well that your content is tending to be picked up more as spam. A good way of monitoring that, of course, would be to utilize some type of spam monitoring. Now, Benchmark, we have a couple tools that are built into the platform that allow you to give you a little bit of peace of mind of understanding where your content kind of stands. First of which, we have the inbox checker. It's one of the only add-on features that Benchmark offers. This, we love to call it our peace of mind tool. It gives you the ability of being able to check to see how your content interacts with various spam filters of the leading ISPs. Additionally, you can also see how your content appears, how it's imaged in various platforms and on various devices. But we're going to talk a little bit more about that in our next webinar. But as it relates to spam, it's a great tool to go ahead and use. It does come at a cost of $14 for 100 tests. We do have a free version as well, but we do highly recommend utilizing the inbox checker, whereas the spam check feature that's built into the test module of the drag and drop, or actually of any of the editors, that'll give you a general rating of your content. And what Lisa was mentioning before, when you're using words in combination like sale and it's on a button that's red, because those two things, when they're put together, that will create another red flag. And you want to try to keep as little of those in there as possible. And something like that will definitely get triggered by that. And it'll give you, it's a score of, I think it's a 0.1. Gives you a score of 0.01 to 10, yeah. 0.10, yeah. So you'll get a general idea, and it gives you a little bit of a description of what to look out for: illegal color code, use of spam words. It could be your images. Oh, something else we forgot to mention: images, alternate text. Now, some of you may notice that when you upload an image into your Benchmark account and you utilize that in a campaign, that it gives you the option of being able to make it a thumbnail, like a hyperlink essentially, and it could be a redirect. But below that, you'll see alternate text. We highly recommend that you have an alternate text for all of your images, even if it's something like storefront or company logo, anything like that, because if it doesn't get displayed on the recipient's end, what they're going to see is that alternate text. And if it doesn't have something, if it just says image 1 or image 3, a lot of times spam filters pick that up, and they see that kind of as, forgive me for saying this, but kind of lazy marketing. Label your information, label your stuff. If it's your storefront, say it's your storefront. It's perfectly fine, because if it's not image, you want them to at least know what was supposed to be there.
And the good thing that alt text also does is, if there are some people who obviously cannot see the email because they don't have vision. So they still use a lot of computers. You'd be surprised how many of them are still on the internet, still making those purchases. But they need to be able to see in their terms. So the alt text is a way of adding description of what it is for those who cannot see it. Yeah. There's one other thing I want to mention is, of course, our drag and drop editor is mobile responsive ready. But if you're using any text box, you can add images. You can add images or video, but I don't recommend putting those in a text box, because that will break the mobile responsiveness, and therefore it's going to affect your deliverability, because the systems that are getting these emails are actually checking for that mobile code. We include it. If you try to put a picture in a text box, while the system will allow you to do it, because some people have insisted on it, it will affect the mobile responsiveness. So if you have any questions about that in particular, just feel free and give me a shout and let me know.
Yeah, and always test. If you make any adjustments to your email campaign, check the preview. Look at it in the desktop version, and especially look at it on mobile, because in today's growing market, we're seeing just under 65% of email users are actually opening on mobile devices. Now, that's not all emails, but we're seeing a lot of users are actually, in fact, opening on mobile
Yeah,
devices.
that's a high percentage.
We're all on the go, and your industry is going to be very different. If you're typically marketing to, an older crowd, desktop is most likely the best thing that you want to optimize for. But for most email marketing today, most people have a mobile device that it's basically an appendage now. It's something that we just don't live without. And it's a great way of being able to passively be able to still communicate with them periodically. And so that's why we're seeing, and we emphasize that your content should always be optimized for mobile responsive nature. Test. You add an image, you add text, you add buttons, go ahead and hit that test feature and just look to see how it looks and feels. Experience it. Send it to yourself as a test and experience it on your mobile device and on your desktop. The more that you know is the better, because you want to try to create the best type of content that will be shared amongst all of your users, and it's going to look great. So definitely do some testing, and just understand before you hit send.
Isn't that the topic of our next webinar?
It is. Well, so our next webinar is going to be on technology, and there's a lot of stuff that encompasses that, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking about that, because there's a lot of really great stuff. So stay tuned for that one. Let's go ahead and jump into our next section here. Oh, yeah, content tips. So authentication. So and we can talk a little bit about this, because I know that we have covered this topic quite a few times in previous webinars, but for those of you who are unsure or just new to Benchmark or email marketing in general, there is something called email authentication. Now, email authentication is very important in today's market when we're considering inbox delivery. When you're using a third-party system, you want to have them authorized essentially to send in your behalf, or at least publicly announce that you guys have some form of relationship together. Now, I'll leave this to Lisa, because this is actually her expertise, and she understands a lot more about how authentication can really affect your open rates and delivery overall.
Right, so you definitely want to make sure that you've authenticated the mails by adding those CNAME records. We have updated some information, and so we can actually improve your authentication. We have older authentication. We have some newer stuff. So please contact support or
Yes.
contact us to make sure that you're up to date on your authentication, because we've released a new CNAME record that will actually scrub the majority of Benchmark from your headers. So I don't want to go too far into it, only because we've covered it a lot, but definitely find out if you're most up to date by going to our FAQs and checking out, or giving us a call.
Yeah. So some of the statistics that we have that are listed here are just general, consensus that we've taken from various sources. So we're seeing about 78% of consumers that have unsubscribed is typically because a brand is sending too many emails. So yes, there is such a thing as sending too many emails. For those of you that receive Groupon, I get tons of emails from Groupon. However, they can get away with it because they do something called daily deals, and they have what I like to call an excuse to be in the inbox. So I'm not always mad about it. That's why I don't unsubscribe. And I feel that a lot of other people feel the same way, because they're still adding value. So even though there's a lot of them, they're still adding value to me and offering whatever deals are in my my community.
Right. A good way to get through that is actually target.
Yes.
So you can target them by asking them, not just the subject, but maybe asking them, how often are you sending too much? Do you want us to send to you less? And then maybe you have two sets. You have a group that wants to be sent to more. Continue to send to them, just to find out who those are who would prefer to have less, and then send them less email.
Definitely. And this also really helps with, creating longevity with your subscribers on your list. You're playing to them, to what their needs are, instead of just, sitting in a meeting and saying, you know what, I'm going to send 3 emails every single month without really even knowing if your customers or your subscribers even want to see it. It's a great way, a great strategy here would be to use surveys or polls. Find out. There's no reason why, it doesn't hurt to ask and find out. And you might find out that maybe you're not sending enough emails. Maybe people want to hear from you more.
Right.
Maybe they want to understand more in depth of what it is that you're offering and what your story is, what your brand story is. So, I think that a lot of people may be underutilizing email marketing, whereas there are going to be some of you that are going to be sending maybe just too many emails. And a good way of being able to take note of this is look at your open rates over a period of time, maybe over the entire year. Look at how many people have grown on your list and how many people remain on your list over that period of time. That's really going to give you a good understanding of the frequency that you should be sending.
Yeah, now in your reports, it will let you know about how many unsubscribes that you're getting.
Yes.
Okay, and if you're getting more than, say, 1% unsubscribes, then retake a look, and you may want to do some testing using A/B testing to see if maybe it's too much frequency, or if maybe the content isn't robust enough. Because I don't want you to think that maybe you're sending too many if you're just sending boring content.
Yeah. Yeah, another thing too, you mentioned unsubscribe. You do get the ability of being able to review if any of your unsubscribes have marked a specific reason to why they would like to be unsubscribed. Definitely pay attention to that. I know a lot of you, including myself, I see my reports, I look at the number of unsubscribes, but I don't click on it. I very rarely click on it. But it's really important to understand why people are leaving. Very much why they're joining your list to begin with. What keywords are attracting them? Just like this, what's turning them off and turning them away? Definitely review that. You are given the information there. And it's perfectly fine to find out exactly why and to look. Another statistic that we have here is 86% of consumers who would like to receive promotional emails from companies that they do business with at least monthly. And about 15% would like to get them daily. Now, of course, this really matters on the level of engagement of your subscribers. So definitely play the field that you belong in. Don't start to overreach, start to oversend or undersend. There's going to be a sweet spot for everybody. And a good way of doing this is monitoring your open rate, monitoring how many people are being added to your list, the number of emails that you send to that list in a period of time, and review those unsubscribes. See why people are going that way. And if you see a trend or a spike, it could very well be what Lisa was mentioning, and we hope that it's not, but it could just be boring content. And it is difficult to put together content, don't get me wrong. There are good ways of putting it together and bad ways, and really, honestly, the best way is to just go trial and error. You're going to eventually find out what works, and it's constantly testing and improving. There is no silver bullet to success. I've mentioned it before, what got you here today may not get you there tomorrow, so you got to keep that marketing hat on and keep those wheels greased so that you can be open to trying new things. So I think that's enough about that. So we do have a couple other statistics here. So caution of length and email grammar. Can't say that enough. This goes without saying. You don't want to be sending emails to individuals that aren't using the correct grammar, of course, and the correct spelling. It can make you look kind of like a doofus. You don't want to do that. You want to stay away from that as much as possible. A good thing to use would be Grammarly. For those of you who don't know what that is, it is a plugin for most web browsers, and it basically analyzes anything that you type, and it's going to give you suggestions, and overall at the end of the month it gives you a report on how many corrections it helped you make. I use it all the time, but yet I still make mistakes. We are human, and it's okay to do that.
Right, they do have a paid model. I've never used it. I use Grammarly extensively. So while occasionally they may mention that there is a paid model, they're not pushy about making you use it. It is super beneficial.
Yes.
And so I use it for pretty much everything I'm doing on my computer. Even if I'm just posting to my friends, it catches little things and makes it better. So I definitely recommend Grammarly.
Yes. Yeah, and then lastly here, we can't emphasize more, follow through with what you promise. If someone signed up to your newsletters, it's okay to send them a promotion here and there, but you really should only be sending them your newsletters. Allow them to come through a different sign-up form to receive promotions. Really, be very clear and concise with your intention. When a subscriber first signs up to your list, you have the ability of changing that welcome email to them and let them know your frequency, what you intend to send. Generally, if you plan to send on the 1st of every month, be consistent with that. Send on the 1st, maybe the 2nd of every month. If it lands on a Sunday, wait till the Monday. That's perfectly fine. But you really want to follow through with your promise. We can't emphasize enough on that. I've signed up to dozens of things, and realize that what I signed up for initially, they start marketing to me about something completely different. I'm turned off by the brand and I unsubscribe. And I see that's a trend with everybody. You really want to know what you're signing up for, even though it's an email that you can always unsubscribe later on. We don't want to see that clutter. So follow through with what you promise and let your subscribers know the frequency of what you intend to send. So let's jump into the actual meat of everything. So campaign and layout. So we have a couple of things that we like to note first. First of which, I like to always talk about the 60-40 ratio. Now, this is something that's always been up to debate, although we've definitely seen that this is factual. Majority of email marketers, you'll receive some emails that are just heavy in images, and people who can inbox really well with those, they tend to have very strong reputation. But for those of you who are still establishing that reputation, it is highly advised, it's ill-advised to go against this 60% text to 40% image ratio. A good way of being able to extend the text is give descriptions under your images. If it's a product, give a little product description. Don't say everything there. Maybe have a read more link, so if someone's interested in that, they click the read more link, and then they can read all about that product or service, and maybe even more from that. And that's another way of being able to gauge the success of that email campaign.
I want you to keep in mind that your alt text and the text on your button is considered part of your text. So feel free to use those options often, because it will improve your ratio. It doesn't have to be exact, just do the best that you can. Make sure that it's not super image heavy. That's the key here.
Definitely. And we mentioned consistency initially, and I kind of overlooked that, but consistency is very important. We talked about earlier the frequency of when you send, being consistent. If you send on the 1st, you send on the 15th, you send on the 30th, be consistent with that. Aside from that, you want to have consistency with your email campaigns. Nobody wants, if you start to send emails that are completely different from each other, when people receive that, they're not going to get that feeling of not having to read a brand name. I think about Coca-Cola. Everyone knows Coca-Cola. You see a red can with silver cursive writing, you don't even have to read it. You know it is Coca-Cola, hands down. And that's the consistency. They've maintained that throughout everything that they've ever done, from all the products that they sell to the actual Coca-Cola itself. They all emulate the same brand, colors and logo and color scheme. So definitely remain consistent. You want to let your subscribers know for the second glance that they look at it, that they pick up that it's you right away. You don't want them sitting there scratching there, well, who is this? Who is sending me? They know the sender. Having that consistency is very, very important.
And it's easy to actually complete this and fulfill it by using global colors, and then by using past emails, you can reuse those layouts again. So that
save your favorite layout.
Yeah, it's much easier to stay consistent that way, and you don't have to recreate everything all the time.
Yeah. The last thing you want to do is try to reinvent the marketing wheel. If you know that something was good, just change the content from it, copy it, use that template, make it yours again, and just interchange stuff. We do have call to action. That's what CTA stands for. And I recommend that every email has some form of call to action. This is a great way of being able to measure the success. Not only will you measure the success of people reading or opening the email, but you're really going to know if people are reading through it. Your call to action is what's going to tell you whether or not someone really read through your email. What that call to action does, it's typically in the form of a button, some type of action that you want them to perform. I mentioned earlier a read more option underneath an article or a product. That's a prime example. Adding it to a cart, another prime example. Linking back to your homepage of your website, that can also be very, very important in terms of the success. Are they interested enough to read more about your products and services? Emails are your gateway. They're not designed to do all of the selling for you. They're designed to be kind of like a fishing lure. You get that initial bite, they click as the bite, they get back on the website, they can add to their cart, they can read more about it, they can register for something. You have most of the functionality that you want them to do on your web page. So very important, have some form of call to action. It's going to help you to create scalability over time with the success of your email campaigns.
I like to help people and then understand that the share buttons, they don't always have to put those at the bottom. They could actually make a call to action if you were trying to have people share. If this is good information, you can actually use a button and link to your site and say, hey, share this with your friends, and have them share the email with that. Under the more feature within Benchmark, there's something that says forward. And that way you're going to be able to record those forwards. That would be a good call to action to remind people that those are there. Just remember though, don't bombard them with too many, one call to action if you must, two, but you want to make sure that your content is focused on fulfilling one thing, right?
Yeah.
If you're trying to make your email do everything at once, you're going to lose them. You're not going to be able to judge well what you're achieving.
Yeah, keep that small, because when you create too broad of answers for them, when I say answers, is those call to actions, having it very narrow allows you to create better targeting, better content that can be very targeted. If you're having a very large email campaign that has every single product and service that you offer, people become overwhelmed and they may not do anything at all because they're too overwhelmed. Having 2 or 3, maybe even 4 small calls to action for various things are really going to help you scale that success on a long period of time.
Right. If it's a product, we'll get, that you may want to present 4 products. But if you're adding your products and then you have every link on your website and you're also linking to all your social media, it might be a little bit overkill.
Now, I have a question here in how this would relate to a blogger, and I think this is really great because we don't really talk a lot about that, although lots of bloggers utilize the heck out of email marketing. It is such a powerful tool. So in relation to what we're talking about, campaign layout, a lot of you guys may be using an RSS feed to post your blog, but also want to send a notification to all of your subscribers, letting them know that your blog's been posted. A great thing about that is the call to action's already built in. It is read the blog. They'll show you just a thumbnail, picture snapshot of it. They received that. They're going to have something very similar to this button here, but instead of survey, it's going to take them right to the blog itself.
Right.
Very powerful. Every campaign in some fashion should have some form of call to action. Even your blog,
yes.
Outside of email, if your blog is there, have something that links to another article, that references or backs what you're already saying, to create more of this trust. It's very important to maintain some level of transparency with them. So again, linking third-party sites, perfectly fine to emails. Let people know that you're doing that. Those can definitely be calls to action. And again, that goes back to scalability. What are their interests? How can you capitalize on that?
Yeah, the thing you want to remember as a blogger is to never put your whole article that you just posted in your email. The point of your email is to drive them to your blog to read it. So you could use the RSS function, because most blogs will already have that feature enabled. But if you don't, you could just use a button, input, read more, and direct them to your site. So always give them summaries and give them interest, make sure that they're interested in it, and then drive them to your site.
Yes, great example. So let's go ahead and let's continue here. And now, again, we talked a lot about consistency already, but here's kind of that idea as well. So Hat Life was actually a former customer of Benchmarks. I was drawing a blank there, but they actually sold their business and were giving us the ability to go ahead and use it. So a lot of you guys may notice the brand. If you've done demos with us, we do use that as a test account. But these are 3 of their recent email campaign. Well, 2013, I guess it's not that recent anymore, but these were recent back in the day of 2013. As you can see, there is a consistency from how the layout is. And now if you at the time had visited their website, their web page actually used the same heading as this. So there was a sense of unison, continuity between the two. So you almost felt like you didn't even leave the site by receiving, or didn't leave the email by receiving an email when you visited the site. How that correlates to you and your business, definitely maintain some form of a header, and that can definitely change from campaign to campaign, but you want to maintain some type of consistency with colors, with fonts, especially placement of your logos, placement of your articles and thumbnails, that kind of thing. And it definitely also helps when you're creating new content. Like they created one template, and now what they've done is they've just made copies of each template and interchanged the content. They're saving tons of time by doing that, also creating a lot more consistency as well.
Now, what you may notice is in here is it may seem image heavy, but their main article is actually below that.
Yes.
So that it balanced out. So that they would have their main article in their email just because they had a big circulation. And then they had their additional articles on the website because they were a magazine. So of course it's going to look glossy like a magazine does.
Yeah, definitely. So let's jump into the call to action. And we did talk a bit about this, and they're very important. I know I just threw together this email. I'm sorry about this muffins email, but I hope that you guys can get the idea here for it. So great calls to action would be register for something. Give the article something like this. If it's the event, mention the event, show an image, an infograph, something like that, in a simple one-click type of action. If it's a download or ebook, same thing. Instead of a muffin, think about your ebook. Place that picture there, boom. And it makes it super simple for them to just click that, I want it, or to download. Makes it very easy. Try now, I'll go. These are all really great examples of how you could utilize a call to action. Lisa and I, we were talking a little bit before this, and something that I love to see is a feature that we have in the reporting, and it's a heat map of your calls to action. It is so cool because you got to actually see your email campaign in front of you, and you see the percentage of what people have clicked and where they've clicked. Emails that I've sent, my call to action for visiting our homepage was a button very much like this. But what I was noticing is that most people were clicking the benchmark logo over the button. Go figure. People just saw that because they're used to clicking the benchmark logo in the product, and it take them to the homepage, that it just made sense. Now, I was putting emphasis on a call to action that in that case wasn't necessary because they were already clicking through. So that helped me reduce the clutter of the email, and I just removed that. So that's another way of really being able to scale and understand, are your call to actions working, and are you directing people to the right place of your email campaign? That placement of that call to action is very important, because if you want them to read the entirety of the email, but you put that call to action at the top, you don't know if they actually read through the email or not. But if it's at the bottom or someone at the bottom, they had to scan through everything at least to get there. So that placement is very important. Anything else that we could add to call to action? I know we covered a lot of really good stuff there.
Just testing. So we talk a lot about that, and I don't think we plug enough the fact that you have A/B testing in your pro account, and that it's going to allow you to test these things.
Yes.
So if you're not certain if something's working or not, use A/B testing. Test different email layouts against each other just to see if which content is getting a better result. That way, you're not guessing. I mean, yeah, you might have a big difference from one campaign to another to the reports, but maybe you don't. So make sure that you check out the A/B testing. Make sure that you check out the heat map when it comes to the links to help you better understand how to create your content and get the best result.
Yes, definitely. That heat map, that is included even in our free plans as well, and that's going to be located under Click Performance in your reports. That is a feature that I think is underutilized, but it provides so much peace of mind. And in respect to the scalability, understanding the placement of your call to actions, creating that definitely lets you know, are people reading? Are they enjoying it? Are they interested? Capitalize on this, create segments that target people for this, and really start to have fun with it. I think that's about it for call to action. Let's jump into the 60-40 text to image ratio. Now, we did talk a lot about how this is a bit of a controversy. As you can see, there are 3 different emails that are here. One particular email that I like to point out here is that you would think that this is one big, large image, and in fact, it is not a large image. It is just one image that they've broken into sections of this, and they have a background color. So it may appear as it's all one image, but it's very well not.
Yeah.
This 60%, 40, ratio, it could definitely change over time. Once you start to establish stronger, better reputation, I don't want to say this, but you can pretty much get away with murder. If you know that you have a highly engaged list and you were to accidentally go against this, not to say that you should by any means, but if you were to accidentally do it, you're most likely not going to see a big difference.
Because engagement is key. So
yes,
your content, while still important, it's important to getting the individual to react to whatever you want to do to use this information the way that you want. When it comes to spam filtering, this used to be king, but now engagement is more important.
Yes.
So when you're thinking about getting into the inbox, you want to make sure that you're doing the authentication. You want to make sure that you're using a branded domain. But once you get into the inbox, then you're thinking, okay, well, I want to make sure that they are following up with the information in the way that I want. So that's why you want to make sure that you're still following the guidelines that we're giving you as much as possible, because it's going to help you get them to react. So if you have questions on like that first email, just remember, if you make the background color the same as the image, it's going to appear as one piece. You want to learn how to do that. Those are just tricks within the editor.
Yes. Yeah, you can make things transparent and creating aesthetics with the email by really playing with that contrast. Global styles will help you perform that. If you guys have questions about that or would like to see some pointers on that, definitely reach out to Lisa or myself. We're not the greatest at content or design, but we definitely have an in-depth understanding. So if you have an idea of what you'd like to do, explain it to us, and we'll at least show you the means of how you can actually get that done.
I can tell you what needs to be done. I just can't tell you how to do it in Photoshop.
Exactly. All right, so let's continue. So list segmenting. So when it relates to content, now we talked about this one a little bit before, and I love this example of a bookstore. Now, what we like to show here is that we have 3 vertical columns. These 3 books are more geared towards female, whereas the next center column is geared towards male, while the last column on the right-hand side is neutral. It's going to be like, and then we have our across the top, in the middle, and down the bottom. These would be the age demographics. And forgive me, some of these books, they don't correlate exactly with the labels that we'd given them, but hopefully you guys will understand and forgive me for that. But a great way of being able to utilize your content to help you with targeting and segmenting, as I was mentioning before, is, I like to call these types of emails phishing emails, but not like your spam type of phishing. This is phishing for information from your subscribers specifically. If you are a bookstore and you want to be able to target your audience better, know what they want, survey them, or send them an email, something like this. This is a great way of being able to encompass this into a newsletter. You can have this in a newsletter and say, these are our new books that are there. So it's kind of happening without them really even noticing that it's happening. Now, if they're interested in one of these titles, they'll select that title and you'll be given a report on that and know exactly where they might fall. So your placement of your content, if you do it strategically, you can learn a lot from your subscribers, and that's what this image is depicting here. Can you think of any other examples of that? I think
that's a fantastic one, actually.
Yeah, I don't want to make it too much more complicated than that, but you could definitely branch this out and how it correlates to you and the services or products that you may offer. Maybe you don't offer a plethora of products or services. Maybe you just offer 1 or 2.
Or maybe it's informational. Maybe you have different topics that you can segment on. Maybe that's different areas of the country that you can segment on.
Yes.
So this is just one very good way to help segment, but it just depends on what you're doing. It could be wildly different. So just think about how you could possibly, and everybody doesn't have to have a bunch of different segments. Maybe you only have 2 or 3. That's fine, as long as you're meeting your subscribers' needs and keeping them on your list.
Excellent. So that's actually going to complete everything. I think we did great on time. I know that there's a couple of questions, and I was able to answer some of those here privately for you guys. I appreciate that. So again, we want to open up for questions and answers. I'm going to move from this screen to just kind of go to a couple other ones. Lisa and I will be answering the questions here privately for some of you. We'll also try to answer those here publicly as well to kind of let everybody know.
Just know that if you aren't sure and you're looking at your content, you're trying new content, to use the A/B testing to test it, because you're going to be able to see which one's getting the better result, right? That's how you're going to know. Or if maybe you have been sending 2 different emails currently and you haven't used them in A/B testing, just check through the links in the report and check that heat map to see what's working. That you can check that layout and make sure if it's performing the way that you'd like. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to give us a call. We'll go over your reports with you.
Yes, definitely. You know, I have another question here. I will be responding and following up to this via email, but I'd also kind of like to just mention for those of you that are still here, the question was, can I get a written format of the reference for the call to actions, and what's the process for that? So call to actions are really simple. You can make them in the form of a button, an image. It can also be a hyperlink. Now these call to actions can do a variety of things. They can open up a default composer for an email as a reply. It can pull up a telephone number to call. It can redirect to a specific URL or an external URL to a third party. It can also add something to a cart if you're utilizing a feature that allows that from email to your cart, or at least back to your website to where they can actually do it from there. What else can it do? I think those would be your general call to actions. Now, how those are utilized, if you're familiar with hyperlinking, very simple. You can highlight a word or letter or phrase, simply click the link icon that's going to be located across the navigation bar or the toolbar, essentially, and you'll be able to just perform these actions. I'm sorry, there was another one. There's also an anchor. A call to action can also be an anchor, although those aren't going to be monitored the way that a typical call to action would work.
Right, although it calls to going
to a
going
section.
To another, yeah, so I don't know if I'd call that a call to action, but I guess it could be.
Yeah. For those of you who are interested, that may be in a free plan, but you're interested in checking out one of our paid subscriptions, our pro plans offer tons of other functionality that you may be missing out with the free plan. A couple of those options that we were mentioning today in today's webinar would be A/B testing. A/B testing is an absolute must-have for the everyday marketer today. Really, you know, you're not shooting in the dark anymore. You can start to do a test between 2 different variants and find out which of your hypothesis is going to be the most successful. A great way of being able to put 2 different campaigns to the test, find out what works best. Targeted emailing, that's really going to encompass utilizing your content of previous emails. So a lot of the stuff that we're talking about with segmenting and being able to reference multiple email campaigns, targeted emailing is that feature that you would be able to utilize for that. Also creating a security pin, removing the benchmark logo, unlimited email sending capabilities, and of course, our flagship, which is going to be the Automation Pro feature. So we want to say thank you for everybody who's attended today's webinar. Stay tuned. We will be doing the final letter of respect, and that will be T for technology. We'll be the same time next week on Wednesday. We hope to see you guys there. We're going to have a lot of really great information and ideas for you guys to utilize existing technology today.